My name is Dr. Coach Pat Ivey, and I am a husband, father, friend, entrepreneur, author, speaker, leader, teacher, coach, and administrator. In each of these roles, I have found a common thread that is a passion for helping those around me maximize their potential as humans. As an entrepreneur, author, and leader, I am living that purpose through Pat Ivey Performance, where I provide resources to human professionals around the world. In collaboration with several others, we've created a podcast titled Beyond Sets and Reps and the Research to Reps Roundtable, a blog with hundreds of articles, chapters, and books, including the first book I co-authored titled Complete Conditioning for Football to my most recent publication, The Table, and a course on mental conditioning. As a teacher, coach, and administrator, I am living that purpose through the various roles I've had throughout my career. They include serving in my current role as Assistant Vice President, Associate Athletics Director for Student Athlete Health and Performance at the University of Louisville. Additionally, I am Adjunct Professor for the University of Missouri, teaching a course on the foundations of sport performance via their online master's program in positive coaching and leadership. My past roles include service at the University of Missouri, Tulsa University, and Arkansas State University. Throughout my 20-plus year career, I've continued bettering myself so I can help others do the same. That is included obtaining Master Strength and Conditioning Coach status from the NHSSCA in 2012, completing my PhD in sports psychology in 2013. In 2021, reaching Registered Strength and Conditioning Coach Emeritus status through the NSCA. Although I have received accolades such as 2013 National Strength and Conditioning Coach of the Year Award, my proudest accomplishments through my career have been coaching my athletes to reach their potential in the form of conference titles, championships, and records, seeing their countless accomplishments in life after sport. Lastly, as a speaker here today, I want to help you maximize your potential by helping you to get your mind right and get your chili hot. So the question I have for you today is, where are you? The answer should be right here, right now. As always, stay on the ground. Hello, everybody. I'm Dr. Coach Pat Ivey, and it is a pleasure to be here, there with you. It was supposed to be in person. We had to adapt and adjust. Sudden change, NCAA guidelines, regulations, rules says that high school coaches and college coaches can't be in the same room until after June 1st, after the dead period of recruiting expires. So this is the next best thing. So I hope you bear with me as I speak into this camera and take you through a presentation on what I believe is going to be something you're going to be very, very interested in. So what am I here to share today? Let's talk about transitions and team development stages. That's what I want to talk about. That's the first thing. Second, I want to talk about mental control strategies. And then last, understanding emotional stability. These are three deep topics, and we probably could spend a full session on each one of these, but I just want to give a quick overview and just present something to you. I think you'll find it fascinating. So talking about team development, Bruce Tuckman, famous psychology professional, came up with these 5 stages: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. And when I was a strength and conditioning coach, my job during the summer off season was to take the recruits, take the team, whatever was recruited. We got the transfer rule now. Sometimes if you were high school coaches, you get athletes that come moving from out of town, parents move, new jobs, you have athletes that leave. So there's always this forming stage. It's that moment when you first walk into the team meeting room and you have all of these new faces. Sometimes it's with your staff as well. That's the forming stage. So the team has just been introduced. Everyone is overly polite, right? Hey, how you doing? Where you from? Oh, nice to meet you. What position you play? Okay. At the start, most are excited to start something new. They're excited to get to know other team members. Usually, as a head coach, you have people they stand up. Hey, tell them where you're from. Tell them your last name. Tell them your name. Tell them what position you play, and your biggest goals or dreams, or say a hobby, some sort of icebreaker. It's always cool. Beginning of camp, beginning of off season. It's always fun. Then the real work begins. That first day of practice, whatever it may be, that's the storming stage. The reality of the weight room, of completing the task at hand, it's hit everyone. The initial feelings of excitement and the need to be polite, they've worn off, because now you've got people that know, hey, I want to work. I want to earn a spot. I deserve a spot. Some people feel like, hey, I've been here long enough. The spot should be mine. People have changed positions. People have gotten stronger, faster, quicker, worked on their skills. Some have worked on their leadership. Some didn't like the fact that they didn't play last year, or they were only third team, all conference, all district, and they felt they should have been second or first team. So they were motivated to come in and make something happen. And then you have the norming stage. This is when people start to notice and appreciate their team members and strengths. They're working, they're starting to practice, they're noticing that, Abby, Johnny, they're making a lot of plays in practice. Wow, they deserve some playing time. They may even deserve to start. You have some people that are really stepping up vocally, and maybe they're looking for that leadership role, that captain's role, being that position leader. And that's when people start to really notice their strengths. Then it's the performing stage. This is where all the coaches want. This is what you want. But how do you go from forming to performing? It doesn't work like that. There is forming, storming, norming, and then performing. So let's go back, just in case we missed it. So forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning. Forming, everyone's together. The team has just come together. First team meeting, new recruits, new people that they were on JV last year. Now they're on varsity. Storming, that JV player is good enough to play and get playing time on varsity. They grew 2 inches. They got a little quicker, a little faster, a little bit more explosive. Well, they're vying for that playing time. Norming, people start to notice and appreciate the team members' strengths. And some people, it makes them nervous. Some of those team members get nervous. Oh, wow, they're looking pretty good. Oh, they're catching all the balls. I've dropped a few. I was first team. Now I'm second team. Things are starting to kind of sift out. Then performing. We have to go through those previous stages to get to performing. You can't try to skip and say, well, if you don't do conflict, or if you want people to get along, you have to go through the storming stage. As a strength and conditioning coach in college, that was my job. That was my role, is to encourage storming. That whether that was certain drills, whether that was giving limited explanation of the drill, and then they have to figure it out and they have to communicate. They have to use autonomy to figure it out. The leaders have to step up. That was my job in the off season. So I was to introduce intensity, introduce some chaos, introduce some sudden change, some things that was going to expose the leadership, expose the communication, expose the work ethic, expose the motivations, expose the teamwork, expose all of these things that on game day, that's what we want as professionals. That was my job, so that we could get to performing. Now, a lot of times summertime, off season, I can only get them so far. Then it was time for spring ball or off season or if you have a spring season. Then summertime comes. Then there's fall camp. It's still the football coaches and the sport coaches' responsibility. We may have to start all over. In college, that's when a lot of new walk-ons started. So as much as I thought we did in the summer and we got to ready to be able to perform, new recruits, new walk-ons, maybe the starting player gets injured during camp. Maybe it's the starting point guard, the starting center, the starting pitcher. And now you go back through the forming stage. Hopefully you've done the work so that you can move through those stages quicker to get to performing and then adjourning. So the season has happened. People retire, they get promoted. People graduate. In this case, they go off to college, or maybe you work with Little League and now they are in high school now. Maybe someone's parents got a job in another state and they're moving. So they're leaving and now there's loss, and then people have to move on from there. So this is another illustration. So the pre-stage, people are starting, you're doing the recruiting, people are starting to move to your town, whatever it may be. Then you have that first team meeting forming, you have storming. That's when you move from independence to dependence and independence. And then you move through from norming to performing to adjourning, and you return back to independence. So this is a good illustration just to help you to know, where are you in this stage? Are you at the performing stage? Are you at the norming stage? Do you need to encourage more storming so that people can find their roles and know their responsibilities, so you can find out who the real leaders are in the norming stage, so that when you get to game day, you don't have to try to figure out who should be in what roles, in what positions, as much as possible. Although there's nothing like competition day. There's nothing like the day of the game where you see how people actually, their preparation, if they are capable and what their abilities are. You still may have to, at the day after the game, go back to that storming stage. Maybe some coaches mix up the roster, right? Some coaches shift some things up, but there's nothing wrong with that. I just encourage you to communicate what the plan is so that the athletes know that, hey, this is where we are. We have to go through this tough period of time, figure out what roles we have so we can get to performing. So let's talk about mental toughness now. I have spent most of my career, from high school to college, professional, and being a college coach, trying to understand mental toughness. It is not the easiest thing. It's a construct, meaning it cannot really be measured. Most true scientists and researchers would say you should not even be talking about mental toughness because there's no specific research on mental toughness. But you all know, what a mentally tough athlete looks like. You know the athlete that can sustain, that they're resilient, they can keep going, they are positive. When things happen, they flip the switch, sudden change doesn't bother them. You know what a mentally tough athlete looks like. So what I want to talk about is emotional stability. I look at mental toughness as a part of what it takes to be a performer. Physical toughness and mental toughness are not the same thing. Just like you use conditioning, lifting weights, different drills to improve your physical toughness, we also have to understand that there are certain drills and skills that we can use for mental toughness. They're not the same. But I will tell you this, the mental controls the physical. Many times when we hear about coaches that get a new job, they talk about the first person you hire is a strength and conditioning coach. I was a strength and conditioning coach. I'm appreciative of that. But if the mental controls the physical, maybe we should look at hiring people that can help us to teach that just as much as we can hire someone to teach us to put on more muscle, get stronger, faster, quicker. If this is controlling this, I think the priority should be learning how to condition our athletes mentally. So in a pyramid of performance, you can go from motivation, you're motivated, to prepare, you prepare, and then you bring your best focus, and then you are emotionally stable, you manage pain, you have accountability. That leads to the top of the performance pyramid, which is where you deliver great performance. So what we're going to do is focus on the emotional stability. So mental toughness training allows people to tap into emotional and mental resources that keep performance at its prime as often and as consistently as possible. Toughness is the ability to perform towards the upper range of your talent and skill, regardless of the competitive circumstances. So the 4 pillars of emotional stability: emotional flexibility, emotional responsiveness, emotional strength, and emotional resiliency. We'll talk about each one of these. Before we get to that, I do want to tell you a quote that pretty much sums up all 4 of those pillars of emotional stability. And I heard this one time, and I shared this with my student athletes. Be prepared in advance to have the greatest day of your life, while being prepared in advance to receive some of the worst news you've ever heard. The first time they hear that, they go, wow. Be prepared in advance to have the greatest day of your life. What does it take to do that? What does it take to be prepared in advance to have the greatest day of your life? Do you wake up and say, oh, maybe today is a day for me to have the greatest day of my life? Or was there preparation that would allow you to have potentially the greatest or one of the greatest days of your life? While this means at the same time, you're prepared in advance to receive some of the worst news you've ever heard. Think about that. At the same time, an emotionally stable person prepared in advance to have the greatest day of your life, while you're prepared in advance to possibly hear some of the worst news you've ever heard. And I've got an example for you. We had a player, he was a linebacker. He was having the day of his life, the game of his life. He's making tackles all over the field. We're actually in his home state. We were playing away, but it was in his home state. The last minute of the game, he tears his ACL. That's pretty bad. After the game, as a coaching staff, we find out that his grandmother, who was watching the game, died after she saw him get hurt on the field. Now, think about this. We won the game. This athlete who had the game of his life, we bring him into the shower and we are getting ready to tell him, you tore your ACL. He's thinking, wow, I had the greatest day of my life. Hey, we've got something to tell you. He said, I already know. I felt it. I already know. I said, no, it's not that. And he looks up. He said, we want you to know, before you hear it from another family member, your grandmother passed away during the game. This young man, it impacted and rocked the whole locker room. We wanted to celebrate and cheer. We couldn't. We wrapped our arms around him. What I can tell you today, I still talk to him. He is a high school coach. And I can tell you, you would want your son or daughter to be coached by this young man because he exemplified emotional stability. The reason I share that is because he shared with me, and he wasn't the only one, that what kept him emotionally stable was remembering to be prepared in advance to have the greatest day of your life while possibly being prepared in advance to receive some of the worst news you've ever heard. So you want to talk about emotional stability. It actually takes preparation. So 6 qualities in mentally tough people. They combat negative thought. They know how to see themselves succeeding. They learn to see stress as a challenge, not a threat. They use humor to break up tension. They know how to learn and move on from mistakes. They develop a just for today spirit. Don't get mad at some of those athletes on your team that might crack a few jokes. They might be mentally tough, and that's what they're doing, is using humor to break the tension so that they can remain emotionally stable. So let's talk about those 4 pillars. The ability to handle different situations in a balanced or non-defensive manner. Emotional flexibility also speaks to the skill of drawing on a range of positive emotions: humor, fighting spirit, pleasure. My favorite example, I like to use people that I know. I was fortunate enough to share a locker room with Brett Favre for a little bit of time. And one of the greatest days he ever had as a quarterback was the day after he found out his dad passed away. And he is someone that I think exemplified that humor, fighting spirit, pleasure, and being able to adapt to different situations in a non-defensive manner. So emotional flexibility. Here's some examples. You can tell your athletes, maybe some of your coaches, sometimes the food sucks on the road. Sometimes the beds are too hard. You might have to ride on a bus or something. Soft or too soft on the road. Sometimes games get delayed, rain delays, weather delays. Sometimes the plane takes off late, bus catches a flat tire. I've had all of this. Sometimes your supervisor, boss, principal asks for something different. Emotionally flexible people have the ability to adapt to this situation with the proper emotions. Doesn't mean emotionless. It means using the proper emotions. Even anger is a good emotion when it's used right. There are just certain times you should not let anger guide you. So emotional flexibility, what do all these examples have in common? They can disrupt routines, they can be annoying, they can be frustrating. So just like children learn from parents how to handle different situations and the helpful way to express emotion, athletes learn from coaches. Direct reports learn from supervisors. Coach, if you lose it on the ref, on the sideline, because you want to charge up your team, just understand you're also could be giving off the perception that you don't have emotional control. But you want your athletes to be emotionally in control when they're on the field, when they're in the classroom. Just understand we are role models. 4 strategies for emotional flexibility. Don't focus on the outcome, wins or loss. So you've heard Nick Saban, other famous coaches talk about it. They focus on what? The process. So that's number 2. Practice focusing on the process. If you focus on the process, it takes you away from focusing on the outcome and the win or loss. This helps you and your athletes to remain emotionally flexible. And rather than emotionally rigid, you want to be emotionally flexible. Talk to someone about what's bothering you. Practice the skills of thinking right as opposed to the skills of thinking wrong. There's statistics out there that show that most of our self-thoughts are negative. As much as 80% of our self-talk is negative. And a thought is something you can control. You can only think one at a time. I think mine, you think yours. I can't make you think, you can't make me think. We do want to have influence on each other. That's why we are in relationship or partnership with one another. Those are skills of thinking right. So people who lack emotional flexibility often become demoralized if their plan is altered in any way. And if the last year has taught us anything with the pandemic, is that we need to be emotionally flexible, because we've all had a lot of plans that have been altered over the last year. Emotionally flexible people, they roll with the punches. They just keep, hey, if I'm supposed to be happy, this situation calls for me to be happy, that's what it is. I can move. My emotion can go left to right, up to down, up and down, wherever it needs to be, and I'll be just fine. People with emotional flexibility are resilient. So a performance guide to mental toughness. Keep your job enjoyable. Tell your athletes to keep school enjoyable. Keep their sport enjoyable. Have clear, attainable goals, not goals that you can't reach. Make sure your training important and use simulation in practice. So make sure your training is important, use simulation in practice. Focus on your own performance one moment at a time. Don't think about a full game, a full series. Think about everything as one play at a time, one moment at a time, one possession at a time. Stay mentally within yourself and make your adjustments, not someone else's adjustments, your adjustments. And control your eyes and ears in high-intensity situations. Recognize when a situation is of high intensity, control your eyes and ears. So, the second pillar to emotional stability. First one's emotional flexibility. This one is emotional responsiveness. You are emotionally engaged and in control in high-intense situations. It means you are responding with the proper emotions. If it's a situation that requires anger, and because you may need to be angry to get motivated to change or do something, and then you have to be in a position where you can actually think and be positive, that's okay. You don't want to be at a situation that requires for you to be sad, like this young man I talked about, the ACL, and the team is in the locker room chanting and cheering. Like, that's not responding with the proper emotions. If some people want to be sad, some people want to cry because they feel and they have some sort of sympathy and empathy for this teammate, that requires the proper emotion. The head coach, you got a player over there and they're hurt. They're gone for the season. They just lost their grandmother during the game. It's probably, if you want to sing the fight song, maybe that's not the time to sing it. Maybe you wait to sing it. Maybe you just give a moment of silence. Maybe you respond different with different emotions. High intense situations. Emotional strength, the ability to handle great emotional force and sustain your fighting spirit no matter what the circumstances. I used Brett Favre earlier, but there are so many other examples of athletes, of people, leaders that take on a great emotional force and they sustain their fighting spirit no matter what the circumstances. So that's the third pillar of emotional stability. So emotional flexibility, emotional responsiveness, emotional strength. And then there's emotional resilience. It's being able to handle setbacks and recover from them quickly. Emotional resilience, being able to handle setbacks and recovering from them quickly. So basically, the big hits keep coming. They just keep coming. Do you say, well, it seems like when it rains, it pours? Or do you say, hey, I'm going to keep rolling with the punches. They're going to keep coming. I'm going to keep going. They're going to keep coming. I'm going to keep going. This is thinking right. And it is a skill. Just remember, 80% of all our self-talk is negative, and some say 90% of those thoughts are repetitive. So if you got something negative on loop, your thoughts affect your emotions affect your physical and physiological well-being. That affects your actions and how you go and behaviors and how you go into situations, which then affect your thoughts. And it creates a cycle. And if that cycle, and it all begins and ends with a thought, and you can control that. It's your choice. So I want to talk about something that makes me very intrigued. It's some famous coaching quotes. And you've heard them. You may have used them. I've used them. So here's some famous motivational quotes by coaches. I want you to light your hair on fire. That's not funny, is it? That's not funny. Step on their throats and finish. Like, really, coach? Like, we just told somebody to step on some throats out there. Serious. Hey, I want you to pedal downhill. We don't have bikes out here. We have feet and cleats. We don't have bikes. But these are things we say because we don't really understand motivation. What is motivation? It's lasting motivation comes from within, inside, intrinsic and internal motivation. All right, here's some famous coaching quotes from a mindset. That kid will run through a brick wall for you. Really? I mean, have you ever seen anyone run through a brick wall? Run through it. Seen some people run to a brick wall, but not run through one. Hey, we need more self-starters. Well, how does that happen, coach? Because if you understand how the self-determination theory, if you can understand, there are people out there that can help you to understand how to make that happen, how to get kids to be more motivated to be self-starters. And mindset, hey, that kid is tough. Like, what do these things mean? When you say that kid is tough, do we mean that kid's motivated? Do we mean that kid works hard and they prepare? Do we mean that kid is focused? Do we mean that kid is emotionally stable? Do we mean that kid is accountable? Like, what is it when we just throw these cliches out? That kid is tough. Let's start to break some of these things down and analyze them and educate ourselves on what it means. Because a lot of times I found myself and other coaches I've coached with, we were the barriers to the kid actually being tough. So here's some famous coaching quotes around instruction. Don't drop the ball. That's not the way the brain works. Don't drop the ball. Then all they think about is dropping the ball. The way the brain processes that information is drop the ball. So what do you want them to do? You want them to catch the ball. How do they catch the ball? What are the techniques and fundamentals of catching the ball? Here's another one. You can't play scared. Scared of what? Scared of not performing? Scared of not delivering? Scared of what? Scared of not delivering what they've been practicing or not practicing? And then play on your toes, not your heels. Okay. Literally, like what you want them to do is you want them to attack and not react or wait too long before they make a move. But how does that happen? Like, is it repetition? Do they need to watch more video and film? Do they really know what they're doing? Do they know their alignment, assignment? Do they really know the X's and O's, the technical and tactical information? Do they really understand the game plan? Are they playing the right position? Here's some famous coaching quotes around psychology. They're playing with a lot of confidence right now. All right, what is confidence? Because if you learn about what confidence is, it's really two choices. Confidence is choosing to deliver great performance, being in the present, the right here, right now, and it's choosing to be competent. So choosing to know what you're doing. That's confidence. So if a team is playing with a lot of confidence right now, what that means is they've chosen to focus on playing one play at a time, and they know what they're doing. It's really hard to be confident and you don't know what you're doing. Here's one. This team is on a roll and they have a lot of momentum. What is momentum? I know what the physical momentum is when something is moving in a direction and gravity or whatever force wants it to keep moving in that direction. But what is it when a team is actually, what does that mean when a team is executing and scoring points and playing great defense? Or they're playing tight right now. Like they're playing tight right now. I've heard that. Like their muscles are tense, or they're scared to move, or they're not reacting quickly enough. What does it mean? Or how about this one? I got a real good friend who was a high school coach, and he told me to add this one. They just want it more than you. Like, really? That's a famous coaching quotes to get your team pumped up, is that the other team wants it more than you. So now I want you to want it more than them. Now let's go out there and score some points. Like, do they know what they're doing? Are they competent? Are they mentally tough? Are they in shape, strong enough? Let's start to go beyond these coaching quotes and break them down and get some people in our programs that can help us. So here's some famous leadership quotes. We need more accountability. Big team, little me. There's no I in team. We say these things because we want better leadership, but we don't take the time to invest in each of those young people that we work with to help them to identify what their strengths are and where their blind spots are. We don't take the time to help them to learn what it is about them that makes them special. But what we say is, from a leadership standpoint, the team needs to be up here and you're down here. But then who gets chastised? Because you didn't do what you're supposed to do? Well, what's the definition of accountability? Is, do you do what you're supposed to be doing? So if you want better leadership, then you as a leader, we as leaders need to find better ways to invest in our individuals that are on the team. Build them up to be the best that they can be. That rising tide raises all ships. Nick Saban, if you don't believe me, Nick Saban believes in this. I've heard him say it, and I know I've done the research. It is about the individual being the best that they can be, delivering what they're supposed to deliver for the team. The team's not above the person. The person's not above the team. The team needs the individual to be the best that they can be. We need, as leaders, we need to develop people to be the best that they can be. Here's one. Heart, famous. That kid's heart's pumping Kool-Aid. Or that kid has no heart. Like, what's the definition of heart? It's a non-stop desire to get better intrinsically and a non-stop work ethic. That's what heart is. And I did some research, and famous sports psychologists identified the heart. And when I saw it for the first time, I was like, wow, there's a definition for heart. Head. That kid's a head case. That kid has a good head on their shoulders. And pull your head out of your like your head is where? Where's my head, coach? Get your head out of there. Really? We say those things. We tell kids to pull their heads out of, like, seriously. Do we ever stop to think about the things that we say, these cliches, what we really want from them? And why can't we give the instructions to achieve the results we want? Why do we have to tell a kid to pull their head out of their backside to as motivation? Why do we have to do that? Why can't we learn what real confidence is, what competence is, what thinking right is, what concentration is? Why can't we learn what those things are? So the question I always ask athletes is, where are you? The answer should be right here, right now. I know I've thrown a lot of information out here, and if you want, you can pull out your phones, scan this QR code, and you can get this presentation. It'll also take you to my website. I've got a lot of free information out there. I've got, like I said, I went back to school, got my doctorate in sports psychology to add it with my career of being a strength and conditioning coach in college for over 20 years. The reason I did that is because my athletes were asking more of me. The coaching quotes sounded cool, and I felt empowered using them, but it was accomplishing nothing. So I want you to be empowered so you can help your athletes. I want to help you do that. I have resources. I've got online resources, social media, whatever it may be. I've got a book called The Table. I know I've talked about it earlier, a workbook. I just want to help. So that being said, if you want to reach out to me, pativey.com. There's my email address is on there. I just want to say thank you for allowing me to share some time with you. I wish I could have been there in person, but I hope you appreciated this presentation. Please give me feedback. Let me know how I can be better. I want you to be better. Stay on the grind. Take care.